Muted.
Now, and I think we're ready to begin. So first thing, I just want to remind you that that questions pane you just typed your yeses into to let me know that you could hear me and see my screen. You can use that throughout the webinar to ask any questions about the presentation or any other questions you may have about Kepware or IoT Technology Solutions. There are many engineers here on the line and also at IoT Technology Solutions to answer those questions as they come in. And then we'll have a brief 10 to 15 minute Q&A period, live Q&A period at the end of the presentation and demo. So feel free to interact with us through the questions pane, and also we'll be doing a couple of polls. All right, so I'm ready to begin. Welcome to today's webinar on our IoT Alliance webinar series. This is our second in the series so far. We'll be doing these once every 2 weeks. And today we're featuring our partner IoT Technology Solutions. I am your moderator, Joanne Backrack. I'm from Kepware. Eric Dellinger is joining us. He's our product manager for our IoT solutions, and he will be doing the majority of the Kepware presentation today. I also have with me Ray Labby from Kepware. He's a senior applications engineer who will be doing a little bit of a Kepware demo for you and showing you how our product works. And then we are very happy to have on the line Vince Guarna and Zach Warren from IoT Technology Solutions, who will be helping out with a presentation of their own and a very nice demo they have prepared for you today. I also have on the line Sam Elzer and Tom Gaudette from Kepware, who will be answering questions for the Kepware side, and Mike Kozinski from IoT Technology Solutions, who will be answering your questions for IoT Technology Solutions. And so we're very happy to have Vince Guarna and Zachary Warren, Managing Director and Senior Architect, respectively, for IoT Technology Solutions on the line. And I do want to note, again, this is all about IoT. So we're going to be talking about what does IoT mean for you, what are some popular business use cases, and so on. So before we get to kind of the more detailed agenda, which Eric will go over, I do want to ask just a poll question right off the bat. And I just want to get a feeling for if you are currently using any technology from Kepware or IoT Technology Solutions. So maybe you're using products and software from both companies. Maybe you're using it from one or the other. But that'll give us a good idea of who's on the line, who's maybe an existing customer, and who's maybe checking this out for the first time so we can tailor our content accordingly. So go ahead and answer that. I'll leave that up for about 30 more seconds, 45 more seconds. Are you currently using software products from Kepware or IoT Technology Solutions? Yes from IoT Technology Solutions, yes from Kepware, yes from both, or no, you are not using that technology at the time. So it looks like we're already getting some answers in, so please vote if you haven't. I'll leave this up for about 15 more seconds. And it looks like some people are actually using technology from both, as well as there are many existing Kepware customers on the line. So that's great to see. It looks like about 33% of you, so a third, are not using either software products from either companies at all. So that's really great. We're really happy to have you on the webinar to show you how our stuff works. Okay, great. So I'm going to go ahead and close out that poll. And now, without further ado, hand it over to our product manager, Eric Dellinger, who will get into the meat of the presentation here.
Thanks, Joanne, and good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Excited to be here. As Joanne mentioned, I am the product manager for our IoT solutions, but I am also, which includes our IoT Gateway solution that Ray Labby will actually demonstrate a little later on. But I'm also I also manage our IoT Alliance program, which is really bringing on new companies like IoT Technology Solutions that you'll see later today. So really excited about that. But before we get started, I just kind of want to run down the agenda and how today's demonstration will flow. I'm going to cover a quick overview of who Kepware is for those of you who don't know who we are. I'll talk a little bit about our flagship product, KEPServerEX, and the IoT Gateway solution that we just released a few months back. And then I'll cover a quick 3 use cases for our IoT Gateway solution. And then I'll briefly talk about the IoT Alliance program and then hand it over to Vince, who will discuss IoT Technology Solutions, and then we'll get into kind of the fun stuff that you guys are all here to see, which is the demonstration of our combined solutions, the IoT Gateway solution, and then IoT Technology's product, ELIoT. So a little bit about Kepware. We were founded in 1995. We're based out of Portland, Maine, as a software development company, focused on developing connectivity solutions for the industrial automation market. We serve many industrial environments, manufacturing, oil and gas, building automation, power and utilities, and then there's a whole bunch of others as well. Anywhere you find industrial automation. We connect globally. Here in the United States, we sell direct, we sell through SIs, and we sell through channels. We also have an OEM market that we serve. Globally, we sell through our preferred resellers. So we have connections globally that can help you get access to Kepware's product. So Kepware, we really see ourselves as the heart of an industrial control system. And more recently, with the release of our IoT Gateway solution, we now see ourselves as the heart of the industrial internet, so IoT. Our connectivity solutions move critical information from point A to point B. So really taking industrial equipment, connecting to it, moving that data up into various types of applications for better decision making, all the way from your controls engineer to make better decisions to the CIO. And our connectivity solution, KEPServerEX, enables this great decision making. And when we talk about it, it's through these four key components or four pillars of KEPServerEX. The first being interoperability, or proven interoperability. And really what this talks to is our ability to connect to things, especially when, as we move into IIoT, the Internet of Things, the industrial Internet of Things, this is what we do. The second pillar, centralized communications, which really talks about, Kepware being a single platform for all of your connectivity needs. And then just to round it out, on-demand scalability, being able to add all the connectivity options in that centralized platform, and then industrial strength. And what makes our connectivity solution great is the wide variety of connectivity options we have. As this diagram demonstrates, on the bottom side here we have a wide variety of connectivity to things like PLCs, RTUs, sensors. We can even connect to OPC servers and other types of applications. We've built a library of 150 communication drivers over the past 20 years that support upwards of 300 different protocols. And then on the northbound side, we connect to traditional automation things like HMI applications, MES applications, SCADA applications, historians, things like that. Again, more recently with our IoT Gateway solution that we've released into the market, we can connect to big data applications, IoT platforms, different various types of analytics applications. It makes connecting to your ERP systems easier. So really opening that up. And we really did that through 3 new interfaces, MQTT, a REST server, and a REST client. We're looking to expand on that. I am the product manager, again, for our IoT solution. So if there are products or connectivity options that you need that we don't have today, we are looking to build that out, things like AMQP or CoAP as a couple of examples. So what we have here is a recent survey by Kepware's analyst firm, L&S. They basically polled their end user community to see what are the top use cases for IoT. And I really just want you to get kind of read through this really quick. I really want you to kind of think about this as we go through the demonstration, to think about how you could use Kepware and IoT Technology Solutions products moving forward in a kind of IoT fashion. And also Joanne will be presenting a survey later on where you can key in your response. I'm going to talk about 3 of these with some of our use cases here. Our first use case is around remote monitoring, where we have a large building and controls company who sells chillers, and they sell service contracts to their customers. They're using Kepware's BACnet driver and our IoT connectivity to monitor vibration, temperature, and a few other attributes of their chillers so they can predict failures and appropriately schedule maintenance to help reduce unplanned downtime. Second use case we have is around quality monitoring. This is a component manufacturer who is doing very little automation. They incorporated several communication drivers from Kepware to various pieces of equipment. Really to start collecting the data, but also to really provide some additional KPIs such as OEE and things like that. So really connecting all this data and moving it into their ERP so they can make better decisions and understand where they're having quality issues and why they're having quality issues. So great use case there on quality. Then the last one I want to cover is a large apparel manufacturer. They need to provide their retailer, who is also a very large retailer, some supply chain visibility. And what they ended up doing was, within their warehouse, they added some connectivity into their conveyor lines, so they could actually monitor what's coming off the conveyors and where the retailer's product was at any given point in time. So another great use case. The data goes into the warehouse management system, which the retailer had access to, and can now see their product and where it is in the delivery process. Next, I'm going to talk a little bit about our IoT Alliance program. And we spent the past year working with companies who have put a market and product focus on IoT. And the goals of this program were to ensure interoperability between Kepware solutions and their solutions, and also to generate market awareness and interest in these solutions. And another reason, for the program was to take a look at what an IoT platform is. Our analyst firm, L&S again, they put together what is an IoT platform, and they really defined it as 4 different technologies. It's connectivity, it's cloud, big data analytics, and then application development. And with Kepware, you get the connectivity, but we don't really solve all these other problems. So as a connectivity solution, we are looking to partner with companies that can help fill out this technology gap for IoT. And with that, I kind of just want to end here and, introduce Vince Guarna with IoT Technology Solutions. He's going to talk a little bit about his company and their solutions that they have, a product called ELIoT, which I think you'll really like. And then they'll get into the demo. Ray and Vince will get into the demo, which I think you're really going to enjoy. Again, if you have any questions around IoT or have any suggestions around IoT products, please shoot me an email. My contact information will be available at the end of the slide.
Great, thanks. Now I'm going to go ahead and pass this over to Vince. Vince, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, great. So I'm going to give you presenter rights. And you should have the presenter skipped over now. Great.
Can everyone see my screen? Okay, good. So thank you, Joanne and Eric. We'll start here with just a little bit of information about IoT Technology Solutions, the company, so you know a little bit more about us. We have a lot of associates with a lot of different backgrounds, but most of us have been building IoT type systems since around 2007, almost 10 years, and we'll talk about a little more detail of that in a moment. We're actually headquartered in Chicago. In fact, we're sitting on top of Union Station. We have the 28th floor of the Fifth Third Bank building, and there's some construction going on outside, so we apologize if you can hear that background noise, but that's where most of our resources are. We have a few people elsewhere in the U.S., but most of what we do is in Chicago. And then lastly, really a really wide range of skills in the group. We have, for example, my colleague Zach leads a controls engineering team, a lot of experience in actually doing factory automation and industrial control. We have people who do a lot of things in software development, in particular a lot of folks with experience on the very large-scale systems, large-scale financial systems, so things relating to big architecture problems, enterprise systems, security problems. We also have people working on the other end of the spectrum where we've done embedded work. So we have people who have done automotive electronics and medical instrumentation. So really a very eclectic group of skills that we've brought together for the engineering team here at IOTTS. We've done things in a variety of domains. Telematics, so if any of you out there are working with an insurance company where you're reporting data to try to get a lower premium, there's a good chance that our software is handling some of your data. In healthcare, we actually have, we've done software that's in literally hundreds of facilities, making sure that things like that your medications were kept at the right temperature and that your operating room was clean when they were working on you. Also, personal fitness. So again, if you're involved in do a lot of things with health clubs, there's probably a good chance that you're using some software that we've done for the trainers and the treadmills and those sorts of things. And then lastly, home automation. Also the case that we've worked with some big customers to provide things that you use at home, for example, to detect whether or not people are breaking into your home and those sorts of things. You've seen these in your home improvement centers. But the one that we're really excited about is the one at the top, manufacturing automation. In that domain, we're really interested in not just selling the software, but we really want to work closely with people to deliver a whole solution. So for that reason, that's the whole reason we have Zach and his team, is because we have found through experience that IoT systems in general are more successful when you really work closely with the customers to make them work. It's not necessarily, there are a lot of great capabilities there, but to leverage those capabilities, it takes some experience. So we expect a model where we're not just delivering software, but also the services. People work with us in a number of ways. In some cases, they ask us to provide an application. They want us to host it, and they want us to manage it. So in that case, we are their cloud company. In other cases, we have some customers who have their own cloud app, and they're just looking for some help, for example, in architecture, or maybe they want one of our subsystems, and you'll see examples of subsystems in a moment. Or even in some cases, we're hired to do some automated validation and testing activities to help vet their products. In some cases, we have customers that just want some specific help in the area of engineering. So for example, Zach and his team work with customers to literally help people bring up new manufacturing lines, or in some cases fix problems, improve efficiency on existing running manufacturing lines. So we have that ability to be integrators and engineers on the floor. Embedded server applications we talked about, and then also it's the case that we have a mobile team as well. So if people want to hire us to do mobile applications, we've done some of that work for people also, in addition to doing it for our own products. And then lastly, every now and then we will run into a customer who wants some pure consulting, so perhaps managing a project or a technology due diligence. Perhaps they're considering an acquisition and they would like to know, have someone vet the company's technical capability. Or in other cases, for example, a consumer products company that wants to get into technology and IoT and is looking for some hints on how to make that happen. So here's a high-level architecture diagram of our platform. We're not going to go through this. There's no time for that. But the reason we wanted to show this is to just point out in IoT and IIoT, Industrial Internet of Things, there's really a lot of IT. And one question we get a lot from customers is they have concerns that to get into IoT, they really have to disrupt a lot of things on their side. They have to put a lot of those IT pieces in place. And what we're showing here is when we put an IoT system together and work with someone, we provide all these pieces. So the goal here is to really have minimal impact on the manufacturing floor so that aside from having an edge device to collect some data and get it to us, there should be very minimal impact and very little infrastructure investment that a customer would need. So what you're going to see today, we're going to introduce you to our product called ELIoT. It's not an acronym, it's just a name. But that's the manufacturing-specific version of our IoT platform that we're very excited about. We're going to show some specifics about how we integrate with the IoT gateway in KEPServerEX. And lastly, we have two examples of some factory analytics, show you examples of how we can take data off the factory floor and show you a couple of processes that are actually running correctly or running within parameters, but actually are giving you some hints that there's a failure about to happen. And then my last slide here is to show you the architecture of what you're going to see today. So you see ELIoT there, that's our cloud system, that's our platform collecting the data and running the things you're going to see. We actually have three automation machines running here. One is an Omron NJ series running in Chicago. Another is an Allen Bradley Control Logic PLC, also running in Chicago. They're both connected to a single edge appliance running the IoT gateway, part of KEPServerEX. Then we also actually have another Allen Bradley Control Logics PLC in Seattle, also running through a different edge appliance, reporting data in. And we use the RESTful connections from the Kepware product, and that's how we get data into our platform. So the important message of this slide, I think, is here we have a variety of vendor equipment in a variety of geographic locations that, as you will see, will allow us to manage the data in a way that's pretty much machine and location independent. And that's really the goal of ELIoT, is to make that happen. And I think that's it. Joanne, you want to take it back?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and take it back now and pass it over to Ray. So I'll take back control here. And you guys should all be able to see my screen here with the KEPServerEX configuration window showing. And Ray's going to take it from there.
Hello, everybody. What we have here, so part of the demo that we're doing with IoT Technologies is, as Vince has explained, there's a couple different installations of KEPServer that are connected to a few devices. And what I'm going to discuss here is one of the KEPServerEX configurations of how they're connected to those devices, and then also the features and capabilities of leveraging the IoT gateway to access that data into their ELIoT platform. So the KEPServer configuration, a lot of you are familiar with what KEPServer does, but the idea is that you can build out connectivity to devices and data sources within the industrial space. So whether that's manufacturing floor with robotics or PLCs, whether that's oil and gas industry with RTUs and flow computers, we have the capability to connect to those devices and get access to that data quickly and easily for higher level applications to receive and process that data. So you could have operator panels controlling that equipment or monitoring that equipment on the factory floor, and in parallel you can provide that data to higher level analytics systems. So what we have here with our KEPServerEX configuration for this demonstration is a couple of different devices here in the Chicago location, where we have an Allen Bradley Control Logic Ethernet driver configuration set up, where we've created a channel and device object to connect to that Allen Bradley device. And these configurable objects here in the tree on the project view represent the device driver and the protocol we're leveraging to connect to the devices, and then also the path and the endpoints and the configuration of the device that we want to connect to. So in the device properties, you'll see common attributes such as IP addresses and other protocol-specific configuration that you can set up to optimize communication down to those devices. Additionally, once you connect to those devices, you can create tags which are associated with the data points that are configured on the controller themselves. So you can create these data points and access the information that the devices have. Now, switching over to the IoT Gateway, what the IoT Gateway does is provide you an easy way to publish or push data using HTTP or MQTT protocols to other applications to collect, store, analyze, and process the controls system data that KEPServerEX has access to today. This demonstration is going to be leveraging the HTTP client agent, which is when you're configuring the client agent, you're identifying the URL or the endpoint that we want KEPServerEX to publish this data to. And here we can identify the URL as well as the methods that we want to use within the HTTP protocol to post or push this data up to that URL endpoint. And then you'll identify on a per agent basis how often you want to publish that information. What's great about the agents that we leverage is you can use very IT-centric technology such as HTTP to access this data quickly and easily. We also provide the data in a JSON format, so it's really quickly and easy to parse that information and to spin up applications to get access to the industrial controls data. We also leverage with our agents the ability to encrypt the connections using TLS and SSL, as well as conduct basic authentication using username and passwords. Now, for this demonstration, we're using the HTTP client or the REST client agent, but we also have an MQTT agent that can publish data. And we also have an HTTP server agent, which provides an endpoint where client applications can read or write data down to devices within your industrial environment. So that's a quick step through of the configuration of KEPServerEX for the demonstration. Now, Vince, I'm going to send it on back to you, and we can take a look at what you're doing with the ELIoT platform.
Great, thanks. My screen visible? Okay, very good. So here we are in ELIoT. We start, as soon as you log into ELIoT, like many systems, the first thing you see is a dashboard. And we've configured the dashboard today to show a few things to give you some ideas of what you might do, a couple gauges, some graphs, but there are a few things here that are going to directly relate to the examples that we're going to show. So you'll see some active alerts here. This is a table of any alerts that are active right now, and a couple of graphs here that I won't talk about until we actually get to the analytics part of the demonstration. If I can just walk through the tab here just to give you a feel for the sorts of things we do. We have an alerts capability. That's where you would define what kind of alerts. So what are the conditions I'm looking for, and what do I want to do when I get that condition? Do I want to send an email, send a phone call? Maybe I want to publish something to a queue that would fire off a stack light back in the factory, something like that. The Views tab lets you create arbitrary, ad hoc views of data. You may decide, you know, that's kind of interesting. I'd like to see what that data looks like in more detail, or I would like to see that variable and these 3 other variables on the same set of axes, and I want to see the last 10 minutes of that. And I may want it in real time. I may want a static look. Or you may want to store some views that you know are going to be very, very popular so that you can call them up over time. Diagrams is also a views capability, but it lets you look at things on the factory floor. So, for example, there'd be a factory floor plan, and we would have icons on that floor plan to let you see things, and then you can basically see not only what's going on, but you can see where on the floor it's going on. Managed data we'll talk about in just a moment, so I won't say any more about that. And reports, as you would expect, allow you to run either ad hoc or scheduled reports that are going to be of interest to you. So let me start with managed data. And here we have, so first let me collapse all this, and you remember we talked about 3 machines, and Ray showed you the trees. Well, here are the 3 machines, the Chicago Allen Bradley Ethernet, the Omron, and the Allen Bradley Ethernet in Seattle. But there's also a 4th tree here, there's one called Analytics, and that gets created by ELIoT when you asked it to do some analysis. Now, I've created it in a separate tree. The reality is the user can actually create that tree wherever you would like. But But to see an example, so if you look at these, if you were to compare this to what Ray was showing you, you would see that this tree looks exactly as Ray's tree. And as Kepware, as the IoT gateway starts reporting that data, we build this tree automatically inside of ELIoT. Once we give it the authentication credentials, we're good to go. So that data is pretty interesting, but it's missing some things. As you know, the PLC controller wouldn't necessarily know, for example, that the data from level transmitter 177 is in gallons. So by coming into this page, we can associate some other things like engineering units and what a min and max value would be, and a retention period. Maybe I only want to keep this data for 60 days, or in this case, I'm asking to keep it for a year. So that's what we can do by taking the relatively raw data that comes in from Kepware, comes in from the PLC, and add a little more information. The other thing that we can do that's pretty interesting is we have this notion of being able to create aliases. So here I have some information that's coming in from the Allen Bradley that's a temperature in degrees Celsius. And that's fine, but it might be the case that I want to look at it in some other engineering unit, for example, Fahrenheit. So in this case, you notice that the tag is the same, 126 TT490, 126 TT490. The gateway is actually sending us only one tag. However, ELIoT knows that you wanted to create an alias and apply different scaling values. So if I went back to the dashboard here, you would see that I'm plotting actually the Celsius and the Fahrenheit values here. So, and you can do any number of aliases. So for example, you might be getting Hertz and you want RPM instead. That's the sort of thing where you get sort of some free low-level analytics applied by ELIoT without having to set up anything additional in your PLC. So now let's move over and talk about the analytics blocks a little bit. So to do some analytics, we have a number of templates that specify computations you can do, and you see the list of them here. There's not time to go through all of them, but there are a couple I'm going to point out in particular we're going to go into in detail. There's one, for example, a derivative block. If I want to, I'm going to want to look at some data values and compute what the rate of change is. There's another one called a two-point correlation, where I have two variables coming in, and I'm very interested in understanding that the relationship between them doesn't exceed some threshold. And then there's a condition block. I'm going to want to look at some number of input variables and decide if something is true or false based on the condition of a lot of variables that come in. So we're going to use this to apply a couple analytics here to see if we can predict some failures. Before I jump into the first one, let me show a quick diagram of a PNID here of our simulated manufacturing plant. So if you would, imagine that we're bottling or canning some fluids here, and we're taking fluid from a bulk storage tank, we're pumping it into a day tank, it's going into the vessels, getting sealed. We have a couple things that are interesting here. The day tank, we need to know when it's time to fill it, and to do that we have a level transmitter, and from the bulk storage tank we also want to know if our flow is good enough. And then here we have these conveyors. We're also going to check a little later. We're going to see, are the conveyors actually operating properly? Do I have a problem with one of the motors? So let's jump into the day tank. Let's find out if the tank is filling quickly enough. So if I go back to ELIoT, if I list my parameters here, I have something called the day tank fill rate. So what I've essentially asked ELIoT to do here is I said, hey, take that level transmitter and I want you to create a rate. So when I said that ELIoT automatically created the new name LTT177 rate, you could rename it if you want to, and here it is in the analytics tree. And I basically said, since LT177 was in gallons, I want to report as gallons per minute. And I could have asked for seconds or hours or day. And I want to look at that every reading. I want very high resolution readings. I don't have to do it every reading. I could do it every 5 readings, 10 readings, but I want to see that every reading. So let me go back to the dashboard and show you what that looks like. So this line here, the blue line, is the tank being filled. So you can see it fills very quickly and then it drains more slowly, and that's a good thing, or you'd have an empty tank. The green line you see is actually the derivative. That's the function we just computed. And as you would expect, when you have a positive slope here, you would expect to have a high derivative value here. And as you have a falling slope here, you would expect a negative slope here, and you can see on the green axis these are negative numbers and positive numbers. So you would expect with a triangle type of wave, you would expect to see a square wave kind of derivative. So what we want to know is if that value of the derivative, if that rate gets below a certain threshold, then I have a problem, and I want to report that problem. My tank may still be working, but it's still not, it may be indicating that a problem is happening. So what I'm going to do is I've got this condition block now called day tank fill rate too low, and what it says is, hey, if that rate variable goes below 2,000 gallons per minute, but that's not good enough. You remember when we're draining the tank, the rate is actually slow. We don't want to generate alerts when we're draining the tank because that's normal operation. So what we've done to compensate for that is we've said, hey, we have another variable here called YT170. That tells us when the pump is running. So essentially that says, I want you to look at the derivative of the flow, but only when the pump is running, because when the pump is running, I know that the tank is being filled, and that's when I want to check the rate. So when all those cases are true, then I want you to make this variable called day tank fill failure prediction true. And Zach, if you could please create a failure. And so you see we've got some physics here we're simulating, so we're on our way up, and the time we want to make this fail is so this will take about 30 seconds for the cycle to continue. So while we're doing that, let me show you one other thing. I'm going to go back and I have two alerts here defined as well. Let's look at day tank fill rate alert, which basically says, hey, if this variable, that condition variable ever goes true, then I want you to send these notifications. And in this case, I'm asking for an email to an email address called demo and an email address called zachary.warren. Didn't have to be an email. It could have been an SMS, a phone call, MQTT, a web service call. But that's what we're doing in the event of an alert. So that condition block computes the true-false value. This alert block tells us what to do when that value is true. And we should be getting close, Zach, we're close. So let's go back to the dashboard. Okay, you see we're at the bottom of the cycle here. So as we start pumping up again, there we go. So what Zach has done is he's created in the simulation the ability to restrict the flow after the flow starts for a while. So here the flow you see looks normal, and now all of a sudden we're going to see we're simulating a constriction in the pipe, and immediately this black line that said, hey, that's an error condition, because now you see the slope is a lot less. And by the way, over here in the active alert table, we see that we have an alert condition. It says, hey, you have an alert condition. That rate is below the side you specified that was safe. And by the way, notice we're still filling the tank, so this system is still running. The operator might not have noticed that it's taking a little longer to fill the tank, but ELIoT did, because we saw that the rate changed. You can see a very specific change in the slope. One other thing I can do here is quickly go over to the email, and you can see that I did get the email, hey, the fill rate on line 1 day tank has dropped below the safe minimum limit. If this rate continues to degrade, line 1 will be shut down. So there you have it, that we've sort of watched it all the way from beginning to end, ELIoT, trying to warn you that you may have an impending problem on that line. Let me switch now over to this conveyor example. And the conveyor example uses something we call two-point correlation. And what we're interested in here is, if you would, imagine that you've got a servo controlling a motor, and there are two things you want to look at. You know that at a certain speed of the motor, you should be drawing a certain amount of current. If at a certain speed you're drawing too much current, then it suggests that you might have a problem, right? You might might have some binding on the shaft. You might have overload on the motors, where the motor's output. You might have a shorted winding. So what we've done is we've created the ability here to say, hey, I want to tell you the relationship between current and speed, and here's what that graph looks like. So here's the speed in hertz of the motor. Here's the current I should be drawing. And what we've told ELIoT now is, hey, look at these variables, and when you see something, what I want to know is, every 200 milliseconds, tell me how far off the speed is for the given current, and tell me how far off the current is for the current speed. and it reports those values. And using that, now we're going to be able to create an alert. So let's go over to the associated condition block for that. And you can see here that we're saying, hey, if the amp error from the 2-point condition block is more than 500 milliamps, half an amp, then I think that's an error. So for example, if I expected 11 amps and I'm seeing 11.6 amps at 19 hertz, then that's going to trigger an error. And by the way, when that error happens, make this condition variable true. I've made this a simple one. You can imagine, something else we might check for is maybe we'd have an open winding. So I might also want to check for the current going down to 0 or less than a certain amount. I could have done that as well, but for the purposes of keeping the simulation simple, we didn't do that. So if you could, Zach, could you please fail the motor as well? If you would, pay attention over here to this part of the this graph on the dashboard, and the blue line is the current, and you see Zach bumped the current up about 600 milliamps, and you notice immediately this green line represents the error condition. And what we've shown is ELIoT recognized that at the given RPM, at the given number of hertz, which is just under 20, we're drawing too much current, and it warned us that that's an error condition. And in fact, we would, you also see it in the alert table here as well. It is shown as that alert is active. If I go to my email, you see that I have more emails saying, hey, you have an excessive current draw on motor M450. You might want to look at that. In this particular case, I also have mail for the supervisor, because in this case I said, hey, if I don't get this alert acknowledged in a certain amount of time, then I want to make sure the supervisor sees that. And let me just go back and show you one more thing in ELIoT so you see where that happened. So if I go to alerts, and if I go to the imbalance alert and the notifications, and you can see here I said, hey, I want the alerts to go to these two people, but I want escalations to go to supervisor at IoTtechnology.com. So that was the other tab that I showed you, and you can control how long that wait is. And then there's the messages you get. So those are the two examples. Again, I would want to point out that the motor was still functioning. In fact, the motor was only drawing a little more current than it should have, but because it was out of bounds based on the 2-point correlation characterization curve that we put into ELIoT, it was able to report that there's a potential problem here that might deserve some attention. So I think that wraps up the demonstrations we want to show you. We just wanted to point out that with these kind of analytics, so all the different things you saw, we can do things like measure material waste. For example, you can imagine out of your supply tank, integrating all of that flow, and then in your dispensing, your fillers, integrating those flows, subtracting those flows, and any difference is going to be wastage. We can also do things like chiller failures. We can understand the chiller failures by watching a moving average over time, or watching min-max. When chillers start to fail, sometimes the compressor stays on all the time, and you see that instead of a little bit of a sine wave or a sawtooth inside the refrigerator stays current. Those are common failure modes for chillers. Or things like intermittent failures, like intermittent proximity switch, where we say, hey, this switch should be closed for a certain amount of time, and when it exceeds that, we've had a customer actually with exactly that problem, where the switch would fail, but then not be a problem later, and they had no way to understand what happened. Well, if we're watching all the timing of all of those activities, we can immediately report the condition, even if the condition goes away. So using these capabilities, combined with the Kepware IoT Gateway, we're really able to abstract the whole factory enterprise, not just the factory floor, and treat all of these things in a common way that lets us build some analytics to analyze, report on it, and predict failures. And I think that's it. Joanne, if you'd like to take it back.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. It was a wonderful demo, wonderful presentation. All right, so we're about wrapped up here. I just have a couple more poll questions for the crowd, so I will pop those up on your screen. One, Eric mentioned this earlier about whether or not you would actually consider using our solutions to solve some of your current challenges. So we talked about improving uptime and yield, reducing waste and rework, increasing energy and resource efficiency. This is a multiple answer, so you can choose all of those. Perhaps we didn't list a reason here, or maybe this is just something that interests you, but you don't have any current plans for it. So would you consider using a solution like this to do any of those specific things, or something in general? A reason not listed. So go ahead, I'll leave that open a few more seconds. And it looks like we're getting some great responses, so thanks for responding. And I'll leave it open a couple more seconds, so get your answers in if you haven't voted yet. So yes, you are interested, or perhaps not. All right. I'll go ahead and share the results here. So it looks like some people, you might be just browsing, so you're not interested at the time, but majority of people on the webinar are interested in using one of the, either something for specific improving uptime and yield looks like the most popular, or something that's not listed, but also reducing waste and increasing energy efficiency. So that's great. And then the last question I'll ask you here, you've heard a lot from IoT Technology Solutions at this time. So if you would like them to contact you, go ahead and indicate that you would like them to, or if you would like to opt out, that's an option as well. So I'll leave that up for a few seconds to give you an option. IoT Technology Solutions would obviously love to contact you to talk more about their solutions and what they presented on the webinar today as far as their demo, which was pretty impressive. So go ahead and answer that poll question. Yes, you would like them to contact you, and obviously we would pass on your contact info in that case. So I'll leave that up for a few more seconds. Please go ahead and vote if you would like them to contact you there. And I have to say, great presentation by Vince and Zach there. Great demo, as well as Ray and Eric. And once we get done with this presentation, or with this poll, just a couple slides to wrap up here. Just to review what we went over, we talked about Kepware Technologies, our platform use cases, and our IoT Alliance program, which obviously involves IoT Technology Solutions, and then we had a really great presentation and demo from them as well. So we'll flash some contact info up here, lots of ways to contact Kepware, and obviously you can find all this contact information up on our website. And then here's some contact information for IoT Technology Solutions if you would like that. And at this point, we can open it up to a free-form Q&A. So if you have questions that that you are interested, go ahead and type those into the questions pane. You want to know more info. And I'll kind of cherry pick. We got one from Rob, and this would be a question for Vince or Zach. Is there a demo of ELIoT available?
Right now we do not have a publicly available demo. We are working with customers to do some individual things. So if someone's interested, we could do that. But in terms of something just generally available for customers to poke at online, we have not yet opened up anything like that.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. And then question for the Kepware side. Kepware integration through OPC UA, so as opposed to what we showed with our RESTful interface. Boulon's asking, what about integration there? So you want to answer that, Ray?
Yeah, so for the demo we used our IoT gateway, which leveraged HTTP to publish data up to the ELIoT platform. Now, KEPServer does support OPC UA. For this demonstration and for architectures and solutions moving forward, really, you could choose either way. The HTTP or MQTT agents do support encrypted and authenticated connections. So your security that you would find when doing your banking online or any other web services type technology that you'd use for purchasing items or moving data across the internet itself is leveraged with these protocols and KEPServerEX's products. So you can use certificates to sign and encrypt the connections and use HTTPS connections as well. And in addition to that, you could also use authentication where you can use username and passwords and also authentication keys within the protocol to ensure that the passing of the data between KEPServerEX and the application is secure and between those applications.
Great, thanks, Ray. Another question coming in from Randy. He's wondering about more explanation on bulk analytics that I think was in a diagram you showed, Vince and Zach, earlier in your presentation.
Bulk analytics. So I guess I have to guess what, I'm not exactly sure what the questioner was asking, but in terms of what's going on here, there are actually two frameworks working behind the scenes. One is analyzing things in real time, those blocks that we've demonstrated here today. What you do not see today is our longer term batch analytics framework that we've used a lot in for example, for telematics, for insurance companies and those sorts of things. So that capability is there. To be able to use that, it requires some very specific needs for particular problems. So we have a framework that allows us to plug in analytics modules in a batch framework to look at long-term trends in data. And what we end up doing is we end up working with customers or OEMs to understand what are their specific needs so that we can configure that framework to be looking for the right things. I hope that answered the question.
I don't see any feedback from Randy, but yeah, hopefully that answered his inquiry there. Interesting question from Mike about details of RESTful communication via the Kepware, via KEPServerEX. And I'm wondering if there's any further info on our website or any other places to get information on the RESTful tools we provide.
Yeah, so on our website, we do have within our help files all the information needed to help set up and configure those connections and those agents. In addition, if you're looking to write values down to KEPServerEX, our URL endpoint that you would configure also has the REST API documentation available directly through the endpoint. So you can just browse to the endpoint on KEPServerEX and be provided that API information. So I'm actually going to post the links real quickly onto the chat for everybody to see.
Great, thanks, Ray. I also want to point out that this was released in our version 5.19 last year, last fall. And if you go on our website, our video page, or our YouTube channel, you can find the 5.19 webinar. And if you go about 20 minutes into that webinar, we demoed the IoT Gateway and specifically show you how to set up that endpoint Ray was talking about, and you can hit that splash page, which has documentation on the API and links to the manual as well. So good question from Mike. Interesting question from Matthew for IoT Technology Solutions, asking whether your product is using any deep learning algorithms for predictive analysis.
So the short answer is we are using some learning algorithms for some aspects, some things we didn't show today, some of the things we're doing in the area of frequency analysis. Whether or not it's to the extent the questioner is asking, I'm not sure, but the answer is we are definitely using some learning algorithms for some of the things that we're looking at. I would guess we should follow up personally if the asker wants to get more detail.
Okay, great. Yeah, so Matthew, let us know if you would like IoT Technology Solutions follow up with you more on that question. And here's another question from Neil on ELIoT. Is ELIoT purely a cloud-based service, or can we purchase the application?
Yes, we knew that was going to come. I mean, as you can imagine, anyone who's been in the software business knows it's very, very difficult to continue to update things that you deploy into a lot of places. Our desire is to manage it as a cloud solution. If there are OEMs or people, large customers who are looking at something that they would like to do and keep control of it themselves, then we would definitely want to have that discussion. But there's a lot of work involved in updating the many IT components and the open source components we use and such. we would expect that most customers would not necessarily want to do that. They would want us to do that for them. But if they have security concerns or something like that, and they'd want to set up a private cloud, or we should talk about that.
Okay, great, thanks. And it looks like we have some questions that came a little earlier in the webinar too that would be interesting perhaps for the rest of people to hear you answer. So one interesting question came through is, can I send an actual value in the message body of the alert notification? So instead of text, like a value, maybe something that triggers the alert.
Yes, in fact, I didn't cover it because of time, but the message body itself there's actually a rich set of things you can do to take context-specific information from the alert and the event that happened. So again, we didn't show it here because we're trying to keep things very brief, but for example, if something fails because it went over temperature, you might want to know what that temperature was. And yes, you can absolutely do that.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. And I think someone else asked in relation to that, when ELIoT detects conditions and issues alerts, can it also kind of automatically issue an action or a control, right or something like that in response to that condition?
Absolutely, and I apologize for I meant to mention that during my presentation, but if you remember that notifications tab when we looked at alerts, we had options like email, SMS, voice, MQTT, and HTTPS. Though the MQTT and the HTTPS, the web service call, would be our way of doing that. For example, the IoT gateway is acting as a client here, but it can also act as a server. We might want to, in response to an alert, issue a service call back to the IoT gateway, which tells it to turn on a stack light, for example, or sound an alarm. Or we might want to publish something to an MQTT queue that the some other machine on the manufacturing floor is polling to get the information back. So yes, you can actually you can definitely cause control actions to happen in response to alerts.
Great, thank you. And another question, perhaps our final question here from Matthew. Can it interface with SAP maintenance to auto-trigger the work order? So related.
In fact, so the SAP maintenance application in particular, first of all, we get asked a lot to interface to other systems, and we've interfaced to PM systems, we've interfaced to order entry systems, we've interfaced to Salesforce.com, customer service systems. So for example, when something goes wrong, you want to automatically file a maintenance ticket. So we have done some of that. I would say we do not have a general facility that users can just configure without our help to do that, but we have done that, and we expect there will be more of that over time. So I think the short answer is yes, but it's not just a radio button you can click and make it happen.
Okay, great. And I think that you already answered this, but Aniket says, can ELIoT take any decision and reply automatically? So we'll make that the last question.
Take a decision and reply automatically? I'm sorry, I don't understand.
I think that might be similar to the question before, where it senses a condition and it just automatically issues some type of control or write down.
Yes. The whole point of our alerting framework is to recognize a condition and then to act on it in some way. Maybe I'm notifying someone, maybe I'm taking an action, maybe I'm issuing a phone call, and I didn't point it out during the presentation, but it can vary based on day of week and time of day. I'll notify different people on Monday through Friday 8 to 5 than I would on Saturdays from 5 to midnight. And in fact, I can also do location-aware things. So I would only send alerts, for example, to the people who are near the plant. So you have all those capabilities, and we can triggering the actions, as we said earlier, is absolutely one of them.
Wonderful. Okay, well, that brings us to the hour. So thank you so much for your presentation from IoT Technology Solutions. It's a pleasure having you. Thank you to everybody on the call for joining us. As we've said, the recording, a link to the recording, as well as the PDF of the slides will be sent out after the webinar in a couple days. So thank you so much, and we'll see you perhaps in a couple weeks for our next webinar in this series. Bye, Vince and Zach.
Bye-bye. Thanks.